Hello there Scapers, my name is Xenavilius and welcome to another trimmed completionist guide. This time we're going to tackle the problem of gathering all 13 champion scrolls to do the Champions Challenge trim requirement. So without further ado, let's dive right in. What is the requirement? The requirement is to defeat all the champions, 13 of which you need to collect scrolls for, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about, how you can collect the scrolls for these guys in the fastest possible way. Now the drop rate for these scrolls is fixed at 1 in 5,000, but as with any drop rate, especially if it's rare, the variation can be massive. So yeah, that doesn't really mean a lot, but it is something to keep in the back of your mind. The kills per hour you can get will vary between 600 and almost 3,000 per hour, depending on what you're killing. And I'd say if you average it all out, it comes out to roughly around 1 in 1,000 for all 13 on average, which means that doing the maths, you would expect to get all 13 within 65 hours, but it could be hundreds of hours, and it also could be done within the space of 24 hours if you get lucky. So yeah, don't look into these numbers too much. The only number you should know for certain is that you're gonna get around 1k kills per hour for everything if you do the best method on average, but that will vary depending on what you're killing and which method you use. The number of cannonballs you use per hour will also vary depending on what you're doing, but I believe the theoretical maximum is 6k. You won't use that. You'll use somewhere like 3k an hour, possibly 3.5k on average. So in total, again, this will depend on whether or not you get lucky at the champ scroll monsters, which require you to use a cannon. So it can vary massively, but essentially it'll be around 100 to 200k, which is around 40 to 80 mil. I think it's crashing right now as well. So yeah, there are a few things you can do to prepare, and I would highly recommend that you do all of these things before you get started. The first is purchasing the restocking cannon ability from Artisan's Workshop. This requires you to unlock the golden cannon first and then the royal cannon. So in total it will cost you 250% respect. That's also a trim requirement, so you might want to do that before you do this requirement. You also might want to get 70 invention and unlock the Oldak coil from the Goblin tech tree with 55 Goblin currency. That is a normal comp requirement, by the way, so it doesn't hurt to do it. I believe you need 2 rune bars, 15 imbued components and 15 heavy components for that, and it basically works exactly the same way as a normal cannon. However, I prefer it to the normal cannon in a lot of situations because it attacks monsters in an AoE manner. So it attacks a bunch at once, there's a bit of a gap, and then it attacks a bunch all at once again, unlike the normal cannon, which sort of goes around firing cannonballs. So you save cannonballs with this because for each burst it only uses up 1 cannonball, whereas with a normal cannon, for each hit it takes up 1 cannonball. However, it's got a shorter range because it uses magic. I'm not sure why, but yeah, it's got a shorter range, so that's a disadvantage. And I'll talk about where it's more useful than a normal cannon and where it isn't. But even though you can make multiple and keep them all in your bank at the same time, after you allow it to decay, which I wouldn't recommend, but it does happen from time to time due to forgetfulness and AFK, you do need to go and talk to the same guy you would talk to get the normal cannon back. Even though he won't give it back to you, he'll just say you need to make another. You still need to talk to him to be able to use another cannon. The next one is the Caraming 3 perk using 5 shadow components, which you can get from Sliske items from God Wars 2. Now this is very useful because it allows you to hit 3 extra targets with Chain, and Chain is the most used ability when you're doing champ scroll hunting. It's more useful for monsters that have low HP that you can one hit easily, but essentially there are 2 options. The first option is putting it on a dual wield weapon, which is what I would recommend. So I put it on my Sea Singer Maki guy, I believe, which is the offhand, and I put Aftershock 3, which requires 5 Illujankan components, on my main hand. Aftershock 3 is very useful because it does AoE damage every 50k damage you do, but Caraming 3 on your dual wield is useful because with dual wield you will get more kills per hour if you're fighting something with very low HP like skeletons or goblins, but with two-handers they're more useful when you're fighting something with slightly higher HP. Essentially it's all about KO potential versus the speed of the weapon. But yeah, I would recommend putting Caraming 3 on your dual wield. You can also put it on your two-handed, but I wouldn't recommend it because it's not worth putting over any other two-handed perks such as Precise 5, Equilibrium 3 or Aftershock 3. So yeah, I would just put it on an offhand switch with a dual wield, which is exactly what I've done. And Scavenging 3, although it's not necessary or not required at all, it is extremely useful to get you hundreds of uncommon and a few rare components as well while you get this requirement done. And that goes on your armor, of course, so you want 5 precious components for this, and the success rate of this is around 1 in 300, so you might be at it for a while. Gizmo hunting, I guess, making gizmo shells and putting in 5 precious components. The best way to do this is via Slayer rings, which you make yourself and dismantle. Another thing that's going to be really useful is aggression pots. They're probably crashing since they're not used at AOD anymore, but they're still very useful for this requirement, so you want to just stock up on a few of them. Not useful everywhere, but they're useful in certain scenarios. Champ scroll enhancers if you do motherload more every day. Demon familiars for the low HP champ scrolls, such as imps, goblins and skeletons. So Demon Deacon is my favorite, or Deacon Demon. And one final point is that this Monday they normalized all the spawn rates of monsters so that all the monsters will spawn at the same rate regardless of which world you go on. Previously, the higher the world's population, the faster the spawn rate, but now it's fixed at a rate equivalent to a half full server prior to this change, which basically means you can go to any world, doesn't really matter, you don't need to crash someone just to get to the highest populated world to get the best spawn rates. So that's good. That's really good. Before we get started with the locations and the strategies for each of the 13 different monsters, let's just have a quick look at what you might want to take with you. So first things first, you don't necessarily need to take Mage with you. You can take any other combat style. I prefer Mage just for the versatility of it, and also the fact that I've already augmented my subjugation and I don't have Armadillo augmented, so yeah. There are advantages and disadvantages to both Mage and Range. I like Mage because of Dragon Breath. By the way, this is the action bar you probably want to take in most cases. There will be some differences which I'll talk about. But if you have Caraming 3, you want to make sure you have Chain first. Dragon Breath, I prefer Dragon Breath over some of the ranged basics, which is why I like to take Mage. Corruption Blast is very, very useful, so I'd recommend that you buy it. And the rest you just cycle through. If you're going to be cannoning and AFKing or semi-AFKing, you want to cycle between Wild Magic, Asphyxiate, and Sunshine. Sunshine is the most important one, especially if you don't one-hit the monsters. As for what I'm wearing, well, power armor, non-degradable, with Scavenging 3 and lots of Slayer perks. So Undead Slayer, you need Undead Slayer. Dragon Slayer is helpful, and Demon Slayer is also helpful, but you don't need Dragon Slayer, you just need Undead Slayer and Demon Slayer. And Scavenging 3 is very helpful as well. Now, like I mentioned, I've got dual wield with Caraming 3 on my offhand. It might actually be better to take the Seasinger Kiba, which is a tier 85 wand, instead of the wand of the Queer Elders, because the wand of the Queer Elders has tier 80 damage and tier 90 accuracy. The accuracy is pretty much 100%, so it's only got tier 80 damage. So the Seasinger Kiba would be a better option if you can make it yourself, or obviously Seismic Wand, or the wand of the Praesil. The Salve Amulet is very useful for the undead monsters. And let's move on to the inventory. I've just crammed everything in here. You don't necessarily need to take all these at the same time. But the 4 auras I like to use the most are Vampirism, Dark Magic, Supreme Reverence if you need it, probably not though, and Equilibrium Aura. Now, Equilibrium Aura is very useful because it raises your minimum hit so that you can one-hit KO quite a few monsters, and you can extend it from 2 hours to 4 hours. So it's a very useful aura, and you can cycle between the 4 of these indefinitely, really. So that's all you really need. The stuff at the bottom are sort of just extras, except for the Demon Horn necklace. You might need that if your monster drops bones and you want to keep up Soul Split and Torment. You obviously want runes, cannonballs. Holy Wrench is useful for prayer. And if you want to pair this requirement up with your Strange and Golden Rocks, then you should have your statue collection bag with you, and you will be able to do magic, prayer, possibly Slayer, and melee rocks with this method. There are no ranged monsters, unfortunately. Aggression potions, holy overloads, and a familiar, either Steel Titan or Deacon Demon. Obviously your Oldat Coil, your Nock Staff if you're going to use that. You don't need both your two-handed and your dual wield at the same time, just one of the two. Slayer Helmet for if you're doing Banshees or Aberrant Spectres. And Ectoplasmator if you want to gain back some prayer from killing ghosts like Banshees and Aberrant Spectres with the Demon Horn necklace on. So yeah, that's pretty much it for my setup. Make sure you bring the necessary teleports to get to where you need to get to as well. And switch up your action bar a little bit depending on what monster you're killing. I will explain that as we get into the monsters. Anyway, the first monster we're going to look at is the fastest by far, the Skeleton Champ Scroll. So you can go to the Lumbridge Catacombs to kill these guys. You don't need a cannon, I don't think you can use one anyway. It's fairly AFK, semi-AFK as I like to call it, and you can get 2,900 kills an hour here, which is crazy, and that's mainly due to the Caraming 3 perk. Aggression pots aren't necessary here, but if you just use the action bar I'm using here, which includes Chain as your first ability, you're going to do a lot of kills an hour. Also the Demon Familiar would be very useful for one-hit KOing these guys. And yeah, I got my Champ Scroll within 1 hour. And that's one of the fastest champ scrolls I've got. You're looking at a very smooth ride. Number 2 is the Banshees. Now this was one of my worst. The way I prefer to do it, there are 2 possibilities for this. The first one is click intensive. It's in the Slayer Tower, Mauritania Slayer Tower. And I do not like to use dual wield here. I like to use a two-handed weapon. The reason for this is because the Caraming 3 perk, which I've only got on my dual wield, isn't very useful here. They're not very close together. And the two-handed Nock Staff has a higher one-hit KO potential than the dual wield, just because their HP is slightly higher than what a dual wield can one-hit with. So with Chain you can easily kill 3 at once with one Chain ability, and yeah, it can be quite annoying because you got to go around, click these guys and keep doing that. But you can get almost 1,500 kills an hour. You can't use a cannon and it can't AFK it, but the upside is that you can get quite a few kills an hour. The other option for this is the Mighty Banshees, which have higher HP, and they're in the Polymniche dungeon, which you can get to with a Slayer Ring teleport. You do need a Slayer Helm for these guys. I'd recommend using the normal cannon here, not the Oldak coil, because it has a much longer reach and they're really spread out. So yeah, similar sort of approach. It's slightly more AFK I guess, but because they're spread out you still need to click these guys to get some decent kills per hour. Not nearly as much as you do at the Slayer Tower, but still I wouldn't recommend this spot just because of the things I just mentioned, and you only get 1,000 kills an hour. By the way, I've tested all of these, so I'm not just throwing numbers at you without any basis. I've actually done some maths and some calculations. So yeah, while we're in the Poly dungeon we can go kill the Aberrant Spectres, which are much more AFK, so they'll be downstairs. Again, a normal cannon is preferable just because of the range, and they're much more AFK than the Banshees are, and you get around 1,000 kills per hour here as well. But I do like this spot a bit more because yeah, it's a bit more open, and they're fairly AFK, so it's not a bad place to kill them. Next we have the Ghouls. This was my last champ scroll and one of my fastest, if not my fastest. Got it within 15 minutes, and the spot is at the Ghoul graveyard east of the Slayer Tower, north of the Menaphos lodestone, and yeah, they're quite spread out, so again a normal cannon would be preferable here. You can AFK them, but I wouldn't AFK them too much because your kills per hour can go down, and there's a nice little spot there as well which you can stand on for the max kills per hour, and you should expect to get around 1,400 kills per hour if you're actively attacking them. And not really sure whether a dual wield or two-handed is better here, but I was using dual wield because that's my default option, and aggression potions can help you out if you need them. Next we have the Mummies. Now the place I started them off at was the Chaos Tunnels. Very easy to get to this spot. It's just a couple of teleports away from the starting point north of the Edgeville lodestone. The Caraming 3 perk is very good here with the dual wield. If you want to AFK you want to sort of stand in the western side of this room, but otherwise just go around attacking as many as you can, and that should get you around 1,450 kills per hour from my tests. Very click intensive because you can't use a cannon, but there you go. The other spot which I used later on, and this was by far my driest champion scroll, took me 18k mummy kills to get this one, but the other spot I did was the much more AFK spot of the Olek Plateau, which you can get to from the Magic Carpet to Sophanum east of there, through the agility pyramid, up the rope onto the plateau, and there are only 4 that spawn, but they spawn fairly frequently. They respawn much quicker than you would expect, and yeah, it is fairly AFK. You might have to click the one on the side from time to time, and one might get stuck from behind one of these walls, but essentially they're fairly AFK and you don't need to pay too much attention. And because they're quite close together, I would recommend the Oldak coil. The aggression pot can help to stop them from sort of drifting away from time to time, but it's up to you really. And the kills per hour here is around 1,000, so you're sacrificing around 30% of your kills per hour but you're gonna enjoy a bit more AFK-ness. While you're here, you might as well go and kill these zombies, which are a bit further inside, and they are also AFK. In fact, this is the spot where I got my zombie champ scroll as well. Again, the old coil would be my preference, although an argument could be made for the normal cannon just because they're quite spread out. But if you have the aggression pot and auto retaliate and the carrying perk, all that good stuff, then you should be fairly okay by just standing there and AFKing from under the cannon. If you really want to go for it, you can attack the ones on the western side who might sort of drift out from that pocket of rock from time to time, but you can always go and just kill them off if you feel like it, or you can just camp the spot with an aggression pot. But if you want to use a normal cannon, they can help you sort of attack the ones that are sort of drifting out of that room. But if you do attack them, they sort of drift out even more, trying to get away from you. So that's why I prefer the old coil as well, to save you some cannonballs here. And you can get around 900 kills per hour, which isn't too bad considering how AFK this spot is. But there is a better spot in terms of kills per hour. Well, I wouldn't say better, but more AFK than this, and that is a stronghold of security on the third floor, I believe, second floor, the famine floor, and this is basically entirely AFK. The downside to this is that there's so many other monsters such as rats and the flesh crawler, which you'll be wasting cannonballs on and your effort on, but despite that, it is very AFK. You don't need to click much at all, just pot up. You don't need aggro pots or anything like that. All that coil because it's all pretty constrained, and you can get around the same kills per hour, just that you'll be spending more on cannonballs, but it's more AFK than the Ulex spot, so it's up to you to make a decision on that front. But the kills per hour is fairly similar between these two spots. Next we have the goblins. Now these goblins in the stronghold of security are once again fairly AFK using the same method. I think they're on the first floor though. Again, they're going to be wasting quite a few cannonballs on the rats that are around there, and it was quite hard to work out the kills per hour because of these random monsters. Rats do drop bones as well, so it's quite hard to work out kills per hour. Had to do some maths there, but you get around 900 kills per hour here just because of the fact that there aren't too many. And if you compare that with the Port Sarim spot, which is just west of the Port Sarim lodestone, then the Port Sarim spot is slightly less AFK because they're spread out a bit more, but I would still prefer to use the old coil here, because if you use a normal cannon you can occasionally hit the rats on the south, which will waste cannonballs. And yeah, I think the old coil is actually faster just because of its AoE ability, and it uses up less cannonballs, but it isn't quite as AFK because you still need to attack the goblins from time to time, which may drift away. To prevent that, you can try using aggression potions as well, and using this method you can get 1.1k kills per hour, and obviously it is my favorite method. I prefer kills per hour more than AFK-ness, well, at least to start with, until I get dry at something. Once I get dry at something, I can't be bothered anymore, and I just prefer the AFK option. But yeah, that's why I've shown you guys two options for most of these monsters so far, so you can choose between whether you want the AFK spot or whether you want the higher kills per hour spot. And next we have the Jogres. I got it fairly quickly, not that quickly, but within a few hours, and the spot here is sort of north of the Glidus landing site, so the crashed Glidus spot just east of the river. Again, I would prefer the old coil here because if you use a normal cannon you will hit two of the Jogres on the far southeast, and that will just be wasting cannonballs because it won't kill them, they'll move away. So yeah, the old coil here is preferred. There's a nice little spot here which I prefer as well, and yeah, it's not very AFK in the sense that you still need to click on them to attack them. The aggression potions may help, but they do get stuck on some of the jungle stuff around. So yeah, but you can get around 1000 kills per hour if you're clicking fairly intensively despite the cannon. If you're not, it'll be a lot less. Next is Hobgoblins. Now there are a few options for these, but the others aren't worth looking at. The only spot I would suggest is the Gnome Village dungeon, which you can get to fairly easily. You need to rummage through some of the crates to get the key and then go through. Just plant your old axe coil, sit there, no aggression potions, no need to click. This is possibly the most AFK spot I've found, but it's only 750 kills per hour just because of that. But you know, it's a nice change from the click intense nature of the other options that are presented to you. And yeah, because it's one of the lowest kills per hour, it will take you a while to get it unless you get lucky, but you don't need aggression potions or anything like that, so that's an upside, I guess. Next we have the Hill Giants. These are situated at the Hill Giant resource dungeon in Edgeville dungeon, so you can get to these using the Horde Stalker ring. going. And I've found an interesting method for these guys. So you want to plant the normal cannon on the west side to take care of those hill giants, and you want to position yourself on the east side with the aggression potion active so that you can kill two birds with one stone. I guess that doesn't really make sense, but basically you can get 2 sets of kills per hour. Your cannon doing the work on the west side and you doing the work on the east side. It's fairly AFK. You can attack almost all of these guys, maybe except one of them with this method, but I would still recommend not AFKing it too much, because yes, your cannon will refill automatically because you're not too far away, but at the same time you want to attack the hill giants which are moving away from you to get some more kills per hour. So yeah, having said all that, the kills per hour here is only 800. If you really want to go for it, you might be able to push it to 1000, but it's mainly because they're quite spread out and that's really a pain in the arse, and also there's a massive rock in the center which makes things a bit tricky. But I hope this method can increase your kills per hour, because the test I did was before I used this method, so the kills per hour should be higher than 800. Next we have the Earth Warriors, one of the most dreaded creatures. The reason they are dreaded is mainly because you can only attack them in single combat. This will be sort of level 1 to 10 wilderness in the Edgeville dungeon. That's option 1 anyway. And because you can only attack them once at a time, if they're attacking you as well, I like to plant my Oldak coil on the south and sort of camp a safe spot just behind a rock, as you can see, and attack them from there, and just ignore the north ones. But you can go to the north and just drop a wild magic and asphyxiate on them from time to time. The problem here is if you allow them to attack you, then your cannon stops working on any other Earth Warrior except the one that's attacking you. As long as none of them are able to actually hit you, you're fine. So if you want to run back and forth between north and south, just killing as many as you can while your cannon is doing the work as well, then feel free to do that, but just make sure you don't allow them to attack you. And if you use this method, you get a nice little 600 kills per hour, so it is the worst so far out of all of the Champ Scroll monsters, but that's only because this spot is fairly AFK. It will go down to something like 500, 600 if you're completely AFK, by the way, behind the safe spot, but if you do some work, then you can get it up to 900 if you're really careful not to allow them to attack you. The alternative is the Chaos Tunnels. This is very click intensive, but it's worth the rewards because it's multi-way combat, and I would recommend the two-hander here, not the dual wield, just because of their high HP and they're not budged close enough together for Karaming 3 to have much of an effect. So yeah, don't need any aggro pots or anything like that. A Titan may help, but you just go around attacking them. You might take some damage from the bronze dragons though, so just be careful about that. But because it's click intensive and you have to put in a lot of work, you get 750 kills per hour here, which is a little bit of a step up from the other spot. So yeah, this is my recommended spot, and it's where I got my scroll, but I got it very quickly, so I didn't really feel the pain that you guys might be feeling potentially. And last but not least, we come to the Imps and the Lesser Demons. So for the first spot I would recommend for the Imps, if you only need the Imp Champ Scroll and you want to AFK, is the spot just northeast of the Kandarin Monastery. Just put your normal cannon, not your Oldak coil there, and it's crucial that you get this spot right because it will allow you to hit Imps on both the south and the west at the same time. If you get it slightly wrong, the trees will block your way and your kills per hour will be a lot slower. But essentially with this, you can AFK it by just standing nearby. You can get on with some other stuff like, I don't know, disassembly of stuff to gather some invention components, I guess. But yeah, if you want to completely AFK it, this is a good spot. You can get 333 kills per hour using this method. If on the other hand you want to get as many Imp kills an hour as possible, the other alternative is something that a lot of Imp seasonal hunters used to go for. That is doing this, so planting this cannon, but also going to the Krandor dungeon in Karamja, which I would recommend getting to using the Hodestalker ring, and killing the Imps there. You want to be careful to use the right action bar, not use any AoEs, so as not to aggro on the lesser demons, which can get your health down fairly quickly. But yeah, just go around attacking the Imps here. Your cannon will be doing the work simultaneously at the Kandarin Monastery spot, which you can get to using your Comp Cape or an RD Cloak. If you get the Imp Champ Scroll at the spot that your cannon's at, you will get a message in your chat box, so you don't need to worry about that. Just teleport there and grab the Champ Scroll. Otherwise, do these simultaneously. Your cannon will take like 10 to 20 minutes to deplete, especially if you have the Royale cannon, which can hold 90 cannonballs at a time. So you might need to teleport back and forth from time to time just to refill your cannon and redeploy it in case it decays. But yeah, this can get you a whopping 950 Imp kills an hour for a lot of effort, but it's definitely worth doing because otherwise you'll be stuck at a very miserly 300 133 kills per hour. Now what's likely is that you're going to want both the Imp and the Lesser Demon scroll at the same time. For this you want to use the Crando dungeon. Just plant a normal cannon where I've shown you here. That should take care of the majority of the imps on the eastern side, but you might want to just go around clicking on them anyway, and you're going to be taking a lot of damage. The Karambing 3 perk on the two-handed weapon is useful here because the Lesser Demons have high HP. You might also want to bring a Steel Titan just for extra DPS. You'll take a bit of damage actually, so you might want to bring some food, but the reward for all this is that you will get 500 imp kills an hour at the same time as getting 800 Lesser Demon kills an hour if you're paying attention, using Sunshine, Wild Magic and Asphyxiate manually whilst on Revolution. The cannon should take care of most of the imps on the eastern side except the ones on the northeast corner, and you might also want to manually go and kill the ones on the western side of this dungeon. But yeah, that's pretty good I guess. And the final option, if you've got the Imp Champ Scroll and you don't want to waste any cannonballs on those, is to just go outside this resource dungeon and plant your cannon there and kill the normal Lesser Demons. You're going to get 800 kills an hour here, similar to what you were getting from inside the dungeon, but you'll take a lot less damage because there are a lot less Lesser Demons which will be attacking you at the same time, and you won't waste as many cannonballs and other stuff. There's like a bat there which could get in your way and use up cannonballs, but essentially yeah, it doesn't really matter I guess. You could use either the resource dungeon or this if you've got the Champ Scroll, but I would do this spot just because of the things I mentioned. And I think that rounds up everything. So yeah, that was a long video, but it was necessary to inform you guys about this. I hope you found it useful. You can go to the Champions Guild once you've got the scrolls at any point. You don't need to use up the scroll as soon as you've got it or anything like that, and you can go and kill the champions which take like 5 seconds to kill each. Bit of a joke really, and they all have their individual rules which you can look up. I'm not going to go through that, but yeah, once you've killed them all and like a few other extra champions, then you will get the Champion of Champions title, and yeah, that'll be the end of that, and you'll have a bunch of uncommon invention components if you use Scavenging 2 or 3, which I would highly recommend. So yeah, thanks for watching guys. I hope I helped you guys out. It took me ages to make this video just because of all the testing I did and the alternative spots I scouted, but yeah, I hope you get your scrolls quickly and you don't go ridiculously dry at any of these like I did, and I will see you in the next one.